So here we are again for part two. Now, before I start, I should point out that whatever you get to see on there isn't exactly what goes on behind the scenes. And I'm sure if you could see what went on behind the scenes, you'd have quite a lot of sympathy for me at this time. For example, part one took me 1 hour to film, and then took me between 8 and 9 hours to edit, re-edit, destroy, upload, watch, realise I've made loads of mistakes, relay the whole thing out again with about 10 or 12 different clips, add the photos, half the photos disappeared, put the photos back in, then I had to save it all again, which takes forever. Then I went to put it on YouTube, which took forever, only to find out that there was a 15-minute limit for videos on YouTube. So then I had to upgrade my YouTube account, then I had to reload it, save it, process it. It went on, I think it was about 11 o'clock at night before I actually got it up there on the screen. And for an example today, I thought today I'm going to have a day off, you know, after all that yesterday. So I've had a day off up until now, it's about 2 o'clock or something. And I thought I'd just pop up to the studio and do a little bit. So I've sat up here for the last 45 minutes talking to you lot, and in one clip done the whole lot. I was so chuffed with it. And then I went up there to turn it off and realised I hadn't turned it on. So I recorded absolutely nothing. So yeah, there's plenty of disasters, but I have turned the microphone up, so hopefully the sound is a little bit better. I'm still on my old microphone, so you may be getting a hiss, but I'm waiting for the postman to bring me a new one. I've just borrowed one, I haven't bought one. They're very expensive, the professional ones. So that's where we are. We're here. So after all those disasters, I've managed to still stay sane. I'm on the cider already, so cheers. And we're ready for part two. Are you ready for part two? I've already done part two. It's just that you won't get to see it because I didn't record anything. But we shall begin. So, after my successful first season on Harefield and my first 30 pounder, did I mention I had a 30 pounder? Sure, I must have dropped it in at some stage. I did a little bit in the winter, but you know, Harefield isn't the sort of pit. None of them big gravel pits fish very well in the winter, to be honest. So I blanked up until about Christmas, then knocked it on the head and went to easier local lakes, probably Tilgate back in Crawley or wherever. And then it came round to March and it was close season, 3-month close season. June the 15th start, June the 16th start. I can never remember whether it's the 15th or the 16th, but I'm sure I knew at the time. And throughout that close season, I was going up to Harefield quite regular. I was doing the mix, you know, the bait at home, the garlic oil fish meals. And going up there probably twice a week, putting in what at the time was probably considered quite a lot of bait, about a pound per trip. So it was an hour and 10 minutes there, chucking a pound of boilies, which is not a lot, is it? 6 egg mix, and then you know, same drive back along the M25, so that it could take any amount of time if you're at rush hour. But I loved it up there. I loved that close season, walking around the pit, seeing quite a few fish actually. Especially in May and the beginning of June. But it became very apparent that they liked one particular area, and that was the car park bay. So as soon as you pull into the car park, you've got a bay right in front of you. You've got the peninsula that forms the bay, which is the actual gravel workings itself. There's one swim right on the end of the gravel workings, and then behind that is just mountains of gravel and cranes and what have you. Conveyor belts, washing plants. It was a working pit, so all that's going on. And then the other side of the peninsula is the Pads Bay, where I caught my first fish the previous year. But this car park bay, they absolutely loved it in there. But you could tell at a glance that it wasn't the same as it was the year before. And that's the thing with a working gravel pit. They do change. You've got barges out there, you've got the odd crane on the bank digging away at the bank, so that's an obvious change. You know, you had a slight peninsula up on the road bank, they'd dug that away, put it in barges and taken it up to the gravel workings to process. occasionally they'd go out on the pit to the old gravel bars with basically what was a hoover. So you've got a massive floating pontoon and this huge machine on the top with like a pipe, yay round, that they lower down, and it is a hoover. It sucks, so it sucks the tops of the bars off, blows them out the top like one of them chipper machines into a barge next door to it, and then they take that off and reprocess that. The way gravel pits work, if you don't know about gravel pits, like the pits that I'm interested in, the older pits are what they call dragline pits, and they excavate them in dead straight lines. That's why you get the gravel bars. And the gravel bars are actually called overburden when they're digging it. So what you've got, if you've got a field or a shallow lake or whatever they're digging, they've got a crane with a cable, and they swing it like pendulum up, and they let go. Huge, great big bucket. The bucket goes in, hits the deck, and then they scrape along until the bucket's full, and they lift it up. And that first scraping, or maybe first two scrapings, is the stuff on the top. The bigger stones, the flints, the ironstone, the rubble, stuff they don't want. So what they do is they swing that to the side and dump it. And then they take the good stuff from underneath, and then they trundle along a little bit, and they do the same again, and they dump it, and they take the good stuff from underneath. So what they're building is a bar, basically. They're building a big strip of crap that they don't want, overburden. And that is what becomes the gravel bars, because when they get to the other end, they'll go to the other side of the bar, and they'll dig a gully up against it and move that across as well. They might put it on top of that, or they might go, when they get 20 yards across, they'll start building a new pile. So you end up with piles of crap and gullies that they've dug out, and piles of crap and gullies, and that's what forms the gravel bars in pits. And that's why they generally all run one way, and they'll get to one end, and then they'll go 90 degrees, and they'll run parallel with that bank. And once you know this in your head, it's a lot easier to find spots and what have you. But when they rework a pit, things change. You can turn up a lake the next year, a working pit, and you'll be looking for your lovely little spot that you've baited and you've caught fish off of. It's sort of just on the top of that bar on the back. There's a little sandy bit, and you can't find that spot. And the reality is that spot's gone. You might have passed that spot on your way to the lake in the back of an RMC lorry. That might have been your spot going in the other direction at 60 mile an hour off to some construction site somewhere. They've dug it out. It's gone. And that was pretty much the case at Harefield that second year. But it was also changing because the pit not only processed what was the workings, not only processed what was in the pit, there were lorries coming in all day, every day from other pits in the valley, and all their gravel and all their type 1 and their sand and everything is all mixed up together. Because it's just dug out of the ground, and it all gets shifted and shaken through different size holes and graded into big piles, and it all gets washed, and they pump the water out of the lake into the plant. It washes all the mud and the sand and the crap off of the stones, and then it pumps all that back into the lake. And essentially what that is a very, very liquid silt that they're pumping back into the lake. And what had happened in this Carp Bay, which we didn't realise at the time, it used to be gravel bars and gullies. It was only small, this bay, probably 60 yards across and 80 yards deep. That's a guess, but that sort of size, so not a big bay. Had a couple of bars in it and a couple of deep gullies. What had happened in the close season that we didn't realise was the gullies had gone. Even the tops of the bars had gone, because that was where they were pumping back in, which is probably why the fish liked it so much. But what had happened is all the silt had settled in between the bars in the gullies and come right up to the top of the bars and above. So now it was just a shallow, muddy area. But the fish absolutely loved it in there. And I say, every time I went up there to bait up, I'd see fish in there. And after a while I thought, that when we come to the draw, that's where I want to be. Unbeknown to me, I think everybody else with a ticket had been up there looking and thought exactly the same, and probably all baited the same, so that made the fish in there stay in there even more. They were going there, they were pumping in there, perfect for carp. It was full of fresh silt, food in it, perfect for carp. It was full of pre-baiting, perfect for carp. and they could bury themselves in the silt in there and feed to their heart's content. So, it was an ideal environment for them. So that's exactly what happened. Come first day of the season, or the day before the season, we all got there, same as the year before, in the horse and barge. All had a few drinks, all talking about what we're going to do, how we're going to slaughter it, what we plans for the year, how many we're going to catch and everything. And then the next day we had the draw, and sure enough, everybody wanted this bay. I didn't get it. I came out a little bit further down the draw. I can't remember where I actually started that very, very first trip, but it wasn't in the bay anyway. And we were convinced whoever got the bay would just get a bag up. You couldn't fail, really. So some guy, he pulled the bay, and he was in there. I can't remember who it was actually. I know he was only in there for a very short period of time, and he blanked. And everyone was just laughing at him. How can you blank in there? And next up in there was Ian Booker. He followed him in after the day or 2 days or whatever. Ian Booker, very, very good angler. I mentioned him before. He used to fish down in Darrenth in the day, and lots of other pits. Caught loads of big fish. So we thought, well, he's definitely going to tear it a new one in there. So anyway, Booker's got in there. He was a lovely chap. He was a little bit scatty, a little bit unpredictable, I think is the word. Bless him. He's passed on now. But he was very highly strung, I suppose. He was highly strung when he went in there, but when he came out 2 days later without a single fish, he'd lost it. Absolutely lost it. He just could not believe that he hadn't caught a carp. Now I was down there for the week. I'd taken the whole week for the first week of the season, and I'd already said to him, I found out when he was going, and regardless of the fact that 2 people had blanked in there, I was going in there and I was going to catch. I'd caught a 30-pounder. I was definitely going to catch these fish. So I got in there, set up my gear, got in there, and you can see trails from them, big chuffer bubble trails. At night you could hear them boshing over in the bottom of the bay, and in the morning there was fizzing and that. I mean, everyone, you walk past it, if you was on that side of the lake to go to the pub, to go to the shop, to do whatever, you couldn't just walk past it when someone had been fishing there, like Ian or the other guy. You had to stop and stand there and just watch over their shoulder and think, I'm sure I could catch them. Why hadn't he caught any? It was just blatantly full of carp. So anyway, I've got in there for the last 2 nights, I think it was, of my session. And I tried everything. I mean, bear in mind, this is back, you'll probably think, I'll just chuck a chod rig out there. And we hadn't invented the word chod then, let alone chod rig. There wasn't helicopter rigs. It was basically, as far as I don't think it was even lead release clips then. I think it was a lead sliding on the line, or we definitely had tubing, and maybe a silicon bit that you popped onto the swivel with your lead on it. So bolt rigs, basically. Bolt rigs, running rigs. They were about your 2 options. But I thought outside the box. So I got some floater controllers, and I wound solder wire around them and kept testing them until they were perfectly neutrally balanced, just over, so they're just waving their way down to the bottom. And I've done the same with my bait, probably with bits of cork, and balanced it so that the whole setup, when I cast it out, would take about 2 minutes to actually get down to the top of the silt. And I thought that this is going to be the one, because obviously, in my mind, everyone else is fishing way down in the silt. The fish are on top of the silt, which is not how I think nowadays. I think when fish are in silt, they're down there probably deeper than your rig is. But at the time I thought, balance it all on the top and you will slaughter them, Laney. That didn't work. I tried fishing down in the silt with a bolt rig, and that didn't work. I tried running rigs, they didn't work. I tried floater fishing, and that didn't work. I think I did actually have 1 fish out of there, and it was neatly foul hooked in the side. It had just swum through the line, pulled the rig towards it, flicked up and hooked it in the side. I think it was about 23 pound. And that was my only capture from that session. It was exciting at the time. I didn't know it was foul hooked. It had gone down under a load of branches. It was still dark. I think it was the early hours of the morning. Keith was fishing just up. There's a swim called the Mad just around the corner. And I called him down. I'd got this fish on it. It had gone under these branches, pitch black. And I thought, no way am I losing this. This is the first fish hooked out of this bait. You know, I'll have succeeded if I've caught a fish. Booker's blanked, the other mate is blanked. I've got one on the end and it's down and it's solid in these branches, pitch black. So I've stripped off down to my pants, given Keith the rod, and I've jumped in. And it's quite deep along the margins, although the rest had silted up. It was deeper than me anyway. So I've gone along holding onto the branches, keeping my head above water, got the line, felt down, and all I could feel was a V of a branch and a piece of flesh behind it like that, carp flesh. And I couldn't get him out, I couldn't break the branches, I just couldn't do it from head above water. So in the end I thought, sorry, I'm just going to go for it. So held my breath, under I went, pulled myself down amongst the branches, got in the jungle, felt the carp, opened up the branch and pushed him out into the water, let go of the branch, come back up, I said, is he on? And Keith said, yeah, he's moving. So I've got back out, a bit chilly by now, soaking wet, covered in crap. Got the rod back off of him, played it like that, he's put the torch on it, and as it's come up sideways, and we can see the bait hanging out the side of its flank, and I was just like, I was absolutely gutted, to be honest. But that was my only action in there, and 2 days later, packed it all away and left, defeated and deflated as well, actually, if the truth be known. But it was only the start. It was only the first week of the season, wasn't it? And we had loads and loads more. We had the whole year ahead of us. There had been fish caught from other bits around the lake. So I was in a bit of two minds, really, with that Carp Bay. I wasn't even sure I wanted to get back in there. It was time to go wandering. So after my first disastrous week, obviously couldn't wait to get back down there. Gone home, sorted all the gear out, came out with a few stupid little ideas in case I did end up back in the Carp Bay in the silt again. Meticulously packed all my gear, made sure everything was sorted exactly how I needed it, and set off again. I'd probably only been over a couple of days, you know. The fishing was here. It was well, an obsession at the time, still is really, to be honest. So a couple of days at home and then back on the M25, back up to Harefield. I didn't expect the Carp Bay to be empty, and you know, sure enough, I was right. There was an angler in there. But the most amazing thing was the working swim was empty. This one swim on its own on the end of the peninsula was a very, very popular swim. It was a perfect swim, really. You've got the Carp Bay round to your right, the Pads Bay where I caught the first year, round to my first fish, round to the left, and you're on this peninsula, so you're right out, you're sort of central widthways in the lake, get a beautiful view down the lake, islands right down the other end in front of you. And you had two bars very close in, maybe 40, 60 yards, they were close, a lot closer than fishing from the sides anyway. And they ran across in front of you. Really easy to find, big stony bars. You know, probably used to be where the workings was, and it's moved back and back over the years. But the swim was free, you know, this lovely little swim all on its own out there. It was quite muddy on like in the front, but someone had nicked some gravel sifting mats. They're like red rubber cross, a bit like those big heavy duty doormats you get that are like 3/4 inch rubber strips woven, you know, crisscrossed together, but bright red, and that's what they sift the gravel through on the conveyor belts. And there was a few of them dotted about to sort of make it fishable. Then you had a massive, great big oak tree, and a lovely sort of flat area to bivvy up. And behind the oak tree, you just had these mountains of gravel, and then the diggers and everything else clanging and banging. It's quite a noisy swim. Everything was going on behind you. Gravel coming down and machines going and beep, this vehicle is reversing and all that sort of stuff going on. But the swim was empty, and I thought, I'm going to have a go in there. You know, I'd never managed to fish it. I don't think I'd actually sort of been in it, really. Once you're in there, it's sort of just yours. It's not a thoroughfare to anywhere. I think you have to get, if memory serves, you had to go round into the workings and into the swim, and then that was you. You were in there, sort of cut off, like being on an island, really. Had these two short bars, had form for some of the bigger fish as well. I was very, very excited to get in there. There was me, Fat Sam, mountain of gear, barreled it all in there. Plenty of food for sort of 2 or 3 days. Plenty of beer, and smokes, and yeah, I was happy. I was in there. I was going to catch them, so spent the sort of an hour getting everything set up right. You know how I wanted it. Got the old bivvy up with. Used to have the used to use one of them. I think Nash made them. The canvas over wraps. So you've got a normal brolly fishing umbrella, like a wave lock, and then you'd put this monstrous piece of canvas over the top with a zip door and everything. It weighed a ton, and they were so thick. They were so dark inside that in the middle of the day, in the middle of a sunny day, you needed your head torch on inside just to find anything. They really were little caves. I've got everything set up. Lent the first rod up against the old canvas bivvy. Went like that to get my bait bag. Bait bag. Bait bag. Where's my bait bag? Bait bag's at home in the freezer with my bait in it. I'm like, oh no! I am not driving home from Harefield just to get my bait. All my own hand-rolled bait. I was absolutely gutted. So I've looked about it, it's not there. I've gone to the van, I've looked in the van. It's not in the van, but what I did find in the van was some of my bait mixing stuff. I had a little pot with a little vial, if you like, of garlic oil, essential oil. I had some shellfish sensapil and some other bits and pieces in there. I think you used to put some little flavoured Mexican onion or something in there. I can't remember, but I had my bait making kit, but nothing to make. So I jumped in the van, drove over to Harefield, tackled it, then a couple of miles away, and had a look through their base mixes for something that was similar. And I think I settled on, it was a NutriBaits one, it might have been Enovite, I can't remember, big fish mix, I don't know what it was called anyway, it was a fish meal bait. Bought some eggs from the shop next door, and back to the lake. I had a mixing bowl in the back of the motor as well, so got back to the lake, got back in the swim, cracked 6 eggs, started to mix up my bait. There was a problem, there was 2 problems actually, to be honest. One was Fat Sam. Fat Sam absolutely loved fish meal bait. You know, used to roll and put them out to dry, turn around, they're gone. Or she'd get her head in the bowl and just nick a big lump of paste. I mean, bear in mind, Fat Sam would eat anything. I mean, some of the stuff she ate is just, it's disgusting, basically. Cow poo. She loved cow poo and horse poo. She loved soap. Absolutely loved soap. She loved that stuff that you get in the drain. And imagine, I don't know if you can remember old council-style houses, that the kitchen drain from the sink used to come out above ground outside and then go through a little metal grid. Some of them probably still do, you know, it's 1960s style houses. And you'd get that stuff on there made of hair and soap and sweet corn and peas and that, you know, and onion skins. She loved that. That was like, it was just cordon bleu to her. So fish meal boilers, they were right up there. She was right in with them. And the second problem was Stumpy. Stumpy was a goose, and he had 1 leg. Now, I don't know if you've ever come across this, but I've come across it a few times when fishing. A wild animal that's injured beyond repair. I've seen it with foxes, I've seen it with geese of various description, ducks, whatever. They know they're not going to survive in their pack. Now, I don't know whether their pack reject them, as it were, or I don't know whether they go away from them knowing that they're not up for it. You know, they can't do the things that the other geese do. But the clever ones, injured ones, soon come to the realisation that if they sort of adopt a human, then they might survive. They get fed. And Stumpy had adopted this swim. So if you fished the working swim, you got Stumpy. And you fed Stumpy. He'd just sit there. He, you know, Fat Sam tried to bugger him off loads of times, but he weren't going nowhere. He didn't care. You know, it was do or die for him. He either made friends with the anglers, got fed, and got safety at night. This is very important. He'd sleep just there outside the bivvy. You know, if he slept over there, the fox was going to get him. But he'd sleep as close to an angler as he could, and he knew he'd get fed. And if he didn't get fed, he'd just steal it. So he would literally be, I'd be pulling his head out of the mixing bowl for the boilies, knocking Fat Sam off and trying to make this mixer bait. Consequently, what happened is it was a hot day and I took too long to do it and all the mix dried out and I could not get them to stick together. You know, I don't know how many of you have made your own boilies, but if you have, you will remember mixes drying out. You know, you're going like this and they're just crumbling back into dust. You're trying to splash water on them, you're spitting on them, you're trying to crack another egg and fold it into it to get it back to how you want it, like sort of Play-Doh. Nothing works. So after endless hours of trying to make bait out of this pile of there, what was still left, that the dog and the goose had net, I think I chucked that in the lake, and I came to an executive decision. And it was one that I was very embarrassed about at the time. Probably still am a little bit, to be honest. I decided that I was going to go back to Harefield bait, and I was going to go, just for this one session, through no fault of my own, I was going to go to the dark side. And the dark side was ready-made boilies. Now, nowadays that makes no sense to anybody, because we all buy our bait ready rolled. You know, you'll buy, you know, I use mainline bait, as everybody knows. It comes to me in 10 kilo sacks, ready rolled. You go to the tackle shop, you buy it ready rolled. You might buy shelf life, you might buy freezer bait, but somebody has made that bait. But back then, that was a no-no. If you didn't make your own bait, you were a noddy. You know, you were an instant carp angler. That's what they used to call them. If you were on the Richworth camp, the fish hardly counted. You know, you weren't making your own bait, it weren't the one. But I didn't have any option. You know, I tried making my own bait. I'd made my own bait. It was at home in the freezer. To be honest, if I'd have driven back to Crawley, got my bait and come back to the lake, it would have all been a lot easier than the faffing about going forwards and backwards to Harefield tackle and what have you. But anyway, we were where we were. So I've driven back up to Harefield tackle. I've gone to the freezer. I've looked around tackle shop like that. Oh, must look like a shoplifter. There's absolutely nobody I know in here. Like that packet of Tutti Frutti straight up the counter, stick in a brown paper bag with it, mate. Rapid, double rapid. Goes in a bag under your jacket. Thank you. See you later. Don't tell anyone. Back to the lake. Got there, opened up the packet. You get this big waft of Tutti Frutti come out. They were bright orange. When you broke them over, they were a bit floury in the middle. You couldn't see why carp had eaten them, but they did eat them. They loved them. So anyway, I put one on each. I think it was a 2-rod water, if I remember right. Anyway, I put one on each rod, and a little stringer, I believe, on each one, little PVA stringer. Got the rest of the bag, folded them over, put them in the brown paper bag, twisted it up, buried it in the bottom of the rucksack, put everything I could on top. I thought if anyone does venture around to this swim, which was very rare, but if anyone does come around here, I do not want them seeing me with Tutti Fruttis on the end. So flick one out to the first bar, one out to the second bar. Like I say, they're about 40 and 60 yards. So I'm not even putting any of them out there. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to buy it. I mean, you always want to buy it because you always want to catch a carp. But did I want to buy it on a Tutti Frutti? Would it even count? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not really sure how I feel about this. But at least I'm fishing. But part of me was also excited to see if they were as good as people said they were. So, cracked open a beer, settled in for the night, Tutti Frutti fishing. I mean, God, what's the world come to? So, had my dinner, had a few more beers, crashed out for the night. Early hours of the morning, one of them's ripped off. Closed bar, I think it was. Got up playing this fish, I'm proper excited. I'm playing it halfway through the fight. I'm sort of coming to and that. I thought, God, it's on a bloody Tutti Frutti. Like that. It's dark, there's no one about, no one will see if I get it in quick and flick the bait off. I played this fish in, it's gone in the net. From memory, I think it was a low 20 mirror. Nice fish, you know, I was well happy with it. Bagged him up, flicked it back out there, got back in bed a little while later. The other one's gone. I've looked into this fish, and this is fighting. This feels like a real good fish. It's stuck behind the second bar for a while, chugging up and down. I'm like shitting myself in case it pings off and cuts on one of the muscles. Managed to get it out behind the first bar, over the first bar, playing it out there. And I had to go right out onto the end of the sort of big gravel slope next door, like out into the lake basically. It's pretty dodgy because where they'd pushed gravel too far, it was very, very steep. So the slope underwater used to sort of just move away from you. But I had to get round there, it got round the back of this gravel, and anyway, it come up and I see a big old common come up, slid into the net, and I've looked and I've thought, oh, yeah, I'll have that. And it was a fish they called the Chinese common. It was sort of very goldfishy shape, you know, very round, deep fish. I can't remember the top of my head the exact weight, maybe 26 pounds or something like that. Big fish, you know. I've only ever had 130, 26 commons, but personal best common by a country mile. The next best was 20 pound, I think. May have even been my second biggest carp at that time, second or third biggest carp ever, and one of the characters of the lake, the Chinese common, on a bloody tutti frutti. I ain't telling no one. I don't know why I'm telling you, I'm just like, still embarrassed, but it's stupid. But in the time, in the context, at the time, I was like, I mean, Bernie didn't care, Bernie Loftus. He had a necklace he'd made. I don't know whether he made it or Paul Klinkenberg made it for him, but anyway, he wore a necklace that was made out of varnished Richworth baits drilled through on a leather thong. And they were, I think they were yellow and red, so it must have been honey yucatan and salmon supreme, I think, alternating, going round his neck. So, you know, he didn't care. I cared. But anyway, I caught 2 fish in a morning on bloody tutti fruities.